Hello, friends. The 1044th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The most problematic area for the Ukrainian armed forces now is Kurakhove. The city, according to the deep state map, is almost completely captured, with the exception of small areas in the west and south. A Ukrainian fighter with the call sign Mochnoi claims that only the western part of the pipe plant territory remains in the Ukrainian army. At the same time, over the past 24 hours, the Russians have sharply advanced to the west of the city, along the main highway that leads to the Zaporizhia region. Less than a kilometer remains to the highway on both sides. This means that the garrison in Kurakhove may be one step away from encirclement. In the Pokrovsk direction, fighting is taking place less than 2 kilometers from the secondary highway that leads from Pokrovsk to the Dnipropetrovsk region. Further south along this highway, the Russians are approaching the villages of Kotliny and Yevhenii. The movement to Kotliny is from the practically captured Vozdvyzhenka and to Yevhenii from the side of Solony. Novovasilivka is on the verge of falling, writes fighter Mochnoi. Deep State also writes about the difficult situation in Novovasilivka. According to him, the situation is such that the enemy is in every corner of the village, as well as our defense forces. In fact, in one house there are ours, and in the neighboring ones there may be the enemy. The tactical situation is at the level of chaos, but the enemy's advantage in manpower may become a decisive factor, unfortunately, reports Deep State. East of Pokrovsk, the Russians captured the village of Vozdvyzhenka, which opens the way for them to the Pokrovsk-Konstiantynivka highway. They have about 4 kilometers left to the highway. By the way, the authorities of Pokrovsk, which is less than 3 kilometers away for the Russians, allocated 14 million hryvnia to support the media, 34 million for landscaping and 30 million for heat supply, which the city does not have. This is stated in the budget approved by the Pokrovsk City Military Administration on December 23. The situation in Yevhenii in the Lyman direction continues to intensify. There, according to the Deep State map, almost half of the village is already under Russian control. They also reach the western bank of the Jerabits River near Ivanivka. The situation in the direction of Yevhenii is deteriorating, writes Ukrainian military Bunyatov. According to him, the Russians do not stop reinforcing this direction with fresh units, trying to repeat the success and develop the offensive to the south, which, unfortunately, is partially successful. Yesterday, the New York Times newspaper summed up the front results of the year in Ukraine. It writes that Russia captured about 3,367 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory last year, which is the fastest advance since the first months of the war. This was the most difficult period for Ukraine since the beginning of 2022. Russia has been gaining momentum since August, capturing more and more territory every month, said Michael Kaufman, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment. According to Ukrainian soldiers, the common opinion that Russia would not be able to withstand such a pace of advance turned out to be unfounded. It is important to understand that they have significant reserves, said a colonel of the Ukrainian army. The most critical situation remains in the Donbass, where the Russians are slowly but steadily advancing towards Pokrovsk. Also, the hotbed of Ukrainian resistance around Kurakhove is steadily weakening, opening up the prospect of Russia advancing through the southern Donbass to the Dnipro, which is now the industrial center of the country. The question is whether the front line will stabilize, said Major Taras, deputy battalion commander of the 68th Jaeger Brigade, which is fighting in the Pokrovsk area. Unfortunately, there are no signs of this yet. One of the reasons experts see problems with troop command. Soldiers said that instead of constantly replenishing and restoring battle-tested brigades, reinforcements were transferred from various units in parts to plug gaps in the defense. According to the soldiers, this undermined cohesion, communication, and morale, the article says. All of this is emotional action within a crumbling system. You put out one part of the house, then you go to another, and it's already burning again. And you don't change anything fundamentally, volunteer Taras Yevhenii told the newspaper. These concerns were expressed by dozens of soldiers and commanders in interviews during recent multiple trips to the front lines and in telephone conversations held last week, the newspaper adds. At the same time, it points out that Russia's territorial advances this year amount to less than 1% of Ukraine's territory. Although Russian troops are cutting a destructive path through small villages in the southern Donbas, they have yet to show that they are capable of large-scale breakthroughs, the New York Times concludes. On New Year's Eve, Zelensky delivered an address against the backdrop of the Motherland Monument, which was illuminated in the colors of the Ukrainian and American flags. In fact, he paid special attention to the topic of relations with the United States in his speech and essentially addressed Trump. He said that the current war is not a showdown where both sides need to be pacified, suggesting that the Republican pacify only Russia, which needs to be forced into a just peace. I have no doubt that the new American president wants and will be able to bring peace and put an end to Putin's aggression. He understands that the first is impossible without the second, because this is not a street showdown where two sides need to be pacified. This is a full-scale aggression of a crazy state against a civilized one. And I believe that we, together with the United States, have this power to force Russia into a just peace, Zelensky said. In addition, Zelensky showed a video from Sudzha in the Kursk region, where Ukrainian soldiers are throwing Russian flags down from administrative buildings. Zelensky also showed the launch of what he claimed was a Ukrainian Sapsan missile in his New Year's address. However, as it later turned out, the footage actually showed the launch of South Korean missiles. Moreover, the video was made 6 years ago. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. I also want to ask you to leave comments. This helps promote the channel. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.